Part 16. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 153. Under the curses of the two gangsters, Yejing and others sent them to the relevant departments. What awaited them might be criminal detention or the complaint of the Miners Protection Association. It was unknown. Xiao drove the hearse and sent them to Jiaolong Street. On the way, Yejing suddenly thought of something. He looked around and counted the people. Including Xiao who was driving, there were only 5 people. After a moment of hesitation, Yejing said, "I find that we seem a little stupid. 3 people plus a little girl want to rush into the nest of others. Isn't this stupid?" Hearing this, Ji Qingjian didn't care. There was a trace of excitement in her crystal clear eyes. Isn't it cool to rush into the nest of evil forces alone and take him down in one fell swoop? It's so cool. This girl is hopeless. But Yejing was just talking. Whether they can beat them or not is not the point. At least they are all first class in their ability to escape. If he really ran, with the speed buff and the golden dragon slaying sword in hand, most people would not dare to chase him. Ai Zyakoi was even more relaxed. When he saw the situation was not good, he just burrowed underground and was done. Gray opened his wings and held Ji Qingjian, flying into the sky, and no one could stop him. Thinking of this, Yejingzin felt relieved. If he couldn't beat them, he would just run away. Who is afraid of who? However, when he arrived at Jiaolong Street, he didn't think so. The closer he got to Jiaolong Street, the fewer people there were. When he saw the sign of Jiaolong Street, he couldn't even see any human figures. After getting off the car, Xiao looked at the car and walked into Jiaolong Street. Instantly, a weird atmosphere filled the air. At a glance, the whole block was deserted and the doors were closed. Not to mention people, not even a living creature could be seen. This made everyone very confused. Where are the people? Gray looked left and right and found nothing. Walking towards Jiaolong Street, Yejing's face gradually became solemn, and a sense of uneasiness surged in his heart. After walking forward for less than 5 minutes, he stopped and stopped everyone. Something is wrong, there can't be no one on the street. Yejing said in a heavy tone. He walked for 5 minutes and advanced several hundred meters, but he couldn't see anyone. This is not normal. Not only that, there is a special smell in the air here. If you smell it carefully, it seems like blood, or the stench of corpses. The weird atmosphere gradually enveloped everyone. Unconsciously, they surrounded Ji Qingjian in the middle and protected her tightly. Or, let's retreat. The little girl didn't have the previous arrogance. She still knew what was important and what was not important. Yejing nodded, and just when he was about to say retreat, his face suddenly changed slightly. It's too late. At some point, from nowhere, a group of people slowly walked out from all around them, from behind the door, from behind the wall, from the shadows. Wrap them up tightly without leaving any way out. Instantly. When the crowd appeared, everyone immediately entered the battle state. Yejing took out the rich version of the dragon-slaying sword, Ai Zyakoi turned his hand, and the black robe with more than a dozen weapons and equipment was draped behind him. At the same time, a green short blade was held in his hand. Gray bent his back, and a pair of flawless white wings with some bald hair spread out, protecting Ji Qingjian under him. Who are you? Yejing looked around vigilantly and shouted loudly, hoping that someone would come out to communicate. Unfortunately, let alone someone coming out, there was no reply. Look, the state of these people seems to be a little wrong. When Yejing's eyes were on this group of people, his face changed drastically. These, nearly 100 people, are all dead. Dead people without breathing and heartbeat. Suddenly, he remembered that he had encountered this situation when he was in the small planetary fragments, the corpse control technique of Kyande, the single-line inheritance of the Nuggets. Could it be that the man is not dead? As soon as he thought of this, he immediately shook his head and denied it, because he found another thing on these zombies. There was a blood-red slash mark on the forehead of the nearly 100 zombies. Like a seal, it also looked like a command spell. They stretched out gray nails that were more than 10 centimeters long, their eyes were lifeless but blood-red, and 2 long fangs stretched out from the corners of their mouths, just like zombies. Damn! Without giving him time to think, this group of zombies rushed towards them like mad dogs. Gray, take the little girl to the sky. Yejing shouted fiercely, and Gray reacted very quickly. Before Yejing finished speaking, he had already picked up Ji Qingjian by the waist and flew straight into the sky. Ji Qingjian looked at Gray blankly and murmured, "Birdman." Gray's face was dark. "These are mutant wings. I'm not a birdman." Only Yejing and Ai Zyakui were left on the ground. Yejing quickly glanced at the strength of these zombies, which were probably between the 4th and 8th levels of the human realm, which was not high. In this situation, Yejing breathed a sigh of relief. As long as they were not strong, he could rely on superb physique plus God of War combo to fight against 100. It seems that I always let others siege me. Yejing muttered in a low voice. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and the nearly 2-meter-long golden dragon slayer in his hand was swung suddenly, and the golden light flashed as it swept across. In an instant, the zombies that attacked him were directly frozen and cut in half. Trigger the War God combo, now level 1. Beating up is not scary, whoever is weak will suffer. Yejing is not a person who sits and waits for death. He bent his legs slightly, burst out with all his strength, and shot out like a flaming bow and arrow. Holding the golden dragon slayer in one hand, the spiritual energy of the 8th level of the human realm quickly turned, and a 1-meter-long white sword energy burst out from the tip of the knife. Ha! Suddenly swung a knife, the golden light was sandwiched in this spiritual energy, and the spiritual energy wrapped in the golden light. The power of the knife was shining. In the blink of an eye, several zombies in front of him fell to the ground. No need for skills. No need for swordsmanship. No need for gorgeous moves. For Yejing, ordinary attacks are all he has. Trigger low-level attack acceleration, attack speed increases by 10%, lasting for 30 seconds. Trigger low-level movement acceleration, movement speed increases by 10%, lasting for 30 seconds. War God combo add 1. One knife double explosion. Yejing instantly felt on fire. He ignored the gray nails and fangs that were swinging at him, and held the golden dragon slayer in one hand, sweeping out, the knife light rolled up the strong wind, and within a radius of 2 meters, no creature stood except him. This is a group of cannon fodder. This is a group of knife-testing stones. Whenever he was besieged, Yejing was full of strength, and the blood flowing in his veins was burning and boiling. In just a few seconds, the position changed in an instant and turned directly. From the slight panic at the beginning to the excitement now. From a group of zombies surrounding Yejing, to now Yejing surrounding a group of zombies. This change was only after Yejing threw 2 knives. He really wanted to yell, "Zyakui, get out of the way." Unfortunately, it was not very good. Yejing's dark pupils were shining with blazing flames. Regardless of his own safety, he bent down slightly and rushed into the pile of zombies, waving the golden dragon slayer that Xinyu was qualified to own at the age of 33, and chopped fiercely. He didn't know what the person behind the scenes was doing with such a group of garbage. But he knew that he was going to have a blast. This was his first siege battle after the small planet fragments. He could have a hearty fight. He stopped playing sloppy games and followed the main plot. If he continued playing sloppy games, all his subscriptions would be lost. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 154. Jiaolong Street. Bailong Club. In a private room, on a gorgeous and expensive carpet, A row of men knelt. They moved in unison, their foreheads touched the ground, cold sweat ran down their faces, their whole bodies trembled, and they didn't even dare to raise their heads. Master Swexu, someone broke in and has already started fighting with the blood drop. In front of them, there was a luxurious sofa, and on the sofa sat a charming woman in a red western dress. The dress exposed her shoulders and was slightly low-cut. From the upper chest to the pattern of the skirt, it was all blood red, neat and tidy without a single wrinkle, clean as if it was not stained with dust. The woman was about 27 or 28 years old, with a charming look on her beautiful face, and her deep red eyes like a demon were shining like a stream, her eyebrows were charming and seductive, and her lips were smeared with a layer of blood, dyeing her lips red. Her red dress covered her body, hiding her seductive figure. Her long neck and bare shoulders were covered with beautiful red hair. Blood color is the color that gives people fear. The woman in red lazily leaned on the sofa, shaking a red wine glass in her hand, looking at the reflection in the glass. It was a row of kneeling servants, who didn't even have the qualifications to look up at her. Suddenly, she raised one hand and stretched out a finger, a slender, pale, flawless finger with bright red nails, pointing at the row of men kneeling down. She didn't know who she was pointing at. Then, a blood light burst out from her nails and shot at the man's head. Bang! White pulp flew across the ground, and blood and flesh were everywhere. The man's head exploded directly. After a muffled sound, he fell to the ground. The remaining few people looked at the headless corpse with horror, their whole bodies trembling violently, sweating profusely, but still kneeling on the ground, not daring to move. Blood Lord! It has nothing to do with us. They broke in on their own. One of the men said with a trembling voice, his face full of fear. Bang! He was responded by a blood-red light. The remaining few people saw their companions die tragically, and couldn't help but kowtow and beg for mercy, fearing that they would be the next to die. Blood Lord, please give me another chance. I must keep all those people in Jiaolong Street and prevent the news from spreading. Blood Lord, I am still useful. I brought 3 supplements for you, and I can still catch them, at all costs. In this gorgeous private room, there were only a few panicked begging for mercy from them. It's so noisy. The woman in red said softly, her eyes were fixed on the red wine glass, and in the red wine glass, there was blood, the most noble blood. It's so noisy. As soon as these 3 words came out, the private room instantly became quiet, without a trace of sound, the kowtow stopped, and they held their breath, fearing that they would anger the devil in front of them again. After a silence of more than 10 seconds, the woman in red opened her bright red lips, raised the red wine glass, and drank the blood. I said before, I came here to recuperate. As long as you listen, you will not die. Then what? I only raised 5 girls under the age of 10, and I can't extract much blood from the early morning. I have to nourish them with blood every day. After a month, I have assimilated more than 300 low-level blood droplets, and I can't even raise a high-level one. It's normal that someone has chased here. It's not your fault. Human technology has been very powerful for thousands of years. But the soft voice turned, and a voice as cold as the wind came out from her seductive red lips. Remember one sentence, either they all die, or you all die. This short sentence made the people below feel relieved. They wiped their sweat in a hurry and kowtowed repeatedly, knocking their heads for more than a dozen times, not caring about the bleeding on their foreheads. Go. At the command, these people seemed to have heard the most beautiful voice in the world, and they fled out of the room. In the blink of an eye, only the woman in red was left in the room. After a long time, the sound of silver teeth grinding could be heard in the room. Damn old men, I will overthrow you when I get back on my feet. On the street, this group of zombies seemed to be giving away free experience. Their strength was only between the 4th and 8th levels of the human realm, but they kept blocking in front of Yejing, roaring with bloody mouths, waving grey claws, and rushing towards him. The only one who thought that the zombies were weak was Yejing. How weak could they be from the 4th to 8th levels of the human realm? How weak could they be? It was because he started to chop, the God of War combo was stacked, the state was passively triggered, and he had superb physique to back him up, and he was holding a peerless magic weapon, so he thought that these zombies were weak. Look at AI Zayakui on the side. Her assassin-like fighting method is not suitable for direct confrontation or group fighting. For zombies with hard skin and strengthened bodies, it is useless for her to cut the fatal parts. She can only cut off their heads or hearts to stop them. Compared with this, Yejing's is much simpler. He swung the golden dragon slayer and chopped randomly, one horizontal chop, one vertical chop, and each chop was filled with white knife energy that spread 3 or 4 meters. With one strike, there was no corpse standing in front of him. After a circle of zombies surrounded him, Yejing straightened his body slightly, squatted down with his legs, and showed a force. He held the knife handle tightly with his right hand and stood on the left side of his body. Draw the knife. He exerted force suddenly from his waist, and an extremely powerful force was transmitted from his whole body to his right arm, and then from his right arm to his right hand. In the blink of an eye, a brilliant golden light flashed from the dragon slayer. Golden light flashed. In a flash, the golden dragon slayer suddenly pulled out. One knife out. Clear all directions. The golden light passed around Yejing in a circle, and the knife energy shot out 7 or 8 meters away. In an instant, there were dead bodies all around him. After just 1 second, the knife in his hand was retracted, but the dazzling golden light did not dissipate for a long time, still surrounding Yejing, as if it was the legendary aura of a rich man. Since he couldn't use the active skill, Yejing simulated one himself. Drawing the knife is a skill to increase power. And the gorgeous golden light was simulated by his spiritual energy, wrapped on the blade, and slashed out with the knife, just as handsome as a special effect. It's a pity that there is no power bonus. The power of the knife, looking around, Yejing was within a few feet, and it was swept away. There was no intact place. If he looked for zombies again, he would be 10 meters away. This knife, this golden knife, made Gray and Ji Qinjian, who were watching the battle in the sky, dumbfounded and speechless. They were the audience overlooking the battlefield with the best visual effect. In just 1 second, Gray and Ji Qinjian only saw a dazzling golden light flashing, and wherever the knife light went, no grass grew, and the area within a radius of 10 meters was completely cleared. In just 1 second, just one knife, all the enemies around were cleared. This knife chopped on the zombie, shocking the hearts of the two of them. This is too fierce. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bouletin G. Bayet. Chapter 155. This knife split Ji Qinjian's impression of Yejing. She saw that Yejing was young, had a delicate face and was weak, so she thought he was just a vase. Who can imagine? She was frightened by Yejing. In order to protect the safety of the little girl, when the bloody corpse first appeared, Gray let Gray hold her and fly into the sky. The viewing angle was very good, and it even felt like watching a big movie. Just when she was worried about Yejing, she saw Yejing take out a 2-meter-long golden knife from his crotch. This was the first time she saw a long knife with a blade covered with gold. Quite luxurious. However, when Yejing slashed out with the knife, it was not just luxury. With one strike of the knife, the golden sword energy spread across several meters. Wherever it went, there was no grass growing, and the living corpses turned into dead corpses, the kind that were cut into pieces. Just when she thought Yejing had exceeded his expectations, she saw another scene next. It was a circle of golden sword light, and the bright light almost blinded her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, there was no living thing within 10 meters. Isn't this too fierce? It seems that our organization has recruited an incredible person. Ji Qinjian looked at Yejing, who was killing everyone below with her eyes, and couldn't help but murmured. When Gray heard this, he immediately pointed at himself. Actually, I am also a fierce person. Ji Qinjian turned her head and looked at Gray up and down, and finally placed her eyes on his bald wings, and couldn't help but nodded. You are also a fierce person. Below, more than 10 minutes had passed. At Yejing's feet, the remains of living corpses were piled up. These living corpses seemed to have been drained of blood and fell to the ground without leaving a drop of blood. Are you okay? Yejing faced these little miscellaneous fish, and the more he fought, the harder he fought, and the more relaxed he became. While wielding the knife, he still took the time to turn around and glance at Ai Zyakui next to him. Ai Zyakui shook her head, pulled out the green blade from the living corpse's chest, raised her slender legs at the same time, kicked the living corpse in front of her away, and then went straight to the next target without pausing for a moment. Yejing saw that Ai Zyakui had no intention of helping, so he ignored her and continued to kill everyone. He hadn't moved his muscles for a long time. He had only had a small fight with the man named Man before. Now that he possesses extraordinary physique, he is not afraid of group fights and can drag them to death. At this time, Yejing was slashing with great joy, when suddenly several times the power surged out of his arms, and a golden sword energy that was more than 10 meters long slashed out from top to bottom. Boom! A loud bang. More than 10 meters of golden sword energy suddenly hit the ground, causing gravel and dust to fly in the sky. Ai Zyakui was so startled that she dodged again and again. After the dust dispersed, only a huge knife mark more than 10 meters long was left on the ground. The area around the knife mark was a mess, and the area was cleared instantly. Trigger double hit, this attack will cause triple damage. It's finally out. His most powerful explosive method. Yejing always thought that his double hit probability was secretly adjusted by the author of Shibai. With a 10% probability, dozens of swords would not be able to trigger it once. Now with his fighting power, one trigger will cause landslides and earth-shattering. Not far from the zombie battlefield, several sneaky figures were lying on the roof, looking at the more than 10 meters of knife marks that suddenly appeared on the ground with cold sweat on their faces and silence. Brother Black Snake, are you sure we want to go up? Aren't we going to die? Brother Black Snake's hands were trembling, and cold sweat continued to flow down his ferocious face. He touched the sweat and swallowed. Brothers, how about we run away? They were just gangsters from Jiaolong Street, a small gang formed casually. Except for Brother Black Snake, who was a practitioner at the third level of the human realm, the other few people were just normal gangsters with no fighting ability. One of the gangsters pointed at his eyebrows and said with a sad face, Brother Black Snake, we are doomed if we run away. That stinky bitch has cast a blood curse on us. In the middle of each of their eyebrows, there is a red dot like a living corpse. This is the Blood Lord's method of controlling people. Once they are under the blood curse, the curse can kill them anytime and anywhere. Brother Black Snake was furious. What if I don't run away? Come on. Did you see that knife mark? There aren't enough people in our group to chop him with one knife. Being in a dilemma, Brother Black Snake was about to burst into tears. People at home are in trouble from the sky. How come I have to encounter this kind of thing? The Blood Lord and the others left Yejing and the others behind, but they couldn't defeat Yejing and the others. Just when they were struggling to death, a clever little gangster suddenly suggested, how about we lead these people to that dead bitch and let them fight? If the dead bitch is killed, wouldn't it be liberating? What if I'm not killed? Just wait to die. Brother Black Snake's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard this suggestion. After thinking for a while, he gritted his teeth and shouted with great courage. Dry. Then they were discovered by Jian flying in the air. Birdman. There are some sneaky people over there. Where? Gray was slightly startled and followed Jian's finger. Sure enough, there were several cabbages lying on the roof. Go over and catch them. As a result, before Brother Blacksnake and the others could take action, Gray sent Justice from the sky and pinned them to the ground. Gray fell from the sky, aimed directly at the cultivated Blacksnake brother, trampled him under his feet, and said coldly, "Did you create these living corpses?" Brother Blacksnake wants to cry but has no tears. Why is it me again? But it was just what he wanted, and he quickly shook his head and said, "How can we do that? Last month, an old witch came out from nowhere and directly occupied the entire Jiaolong Street. She also caught 5 young girls and let them drink blood every day. We were all forced to run away by her." Lies one after another. Old witch. Young girl. Let them drink blood. Gray frowned and looked at Jian. It should be the real owner. He stomped his feet hard and suddenly stepped hard on Brother Blacksnake. Where is that old witch now? Brother Blacksnake cursed Gray in his heart, but his face did not show any expression. He endured the severe pain from his back and pointed to a tall building behind him. The Sky Snake Club. It's right there. There are more than 100 low-level blood corpses and 5 mid-level blood corpses. The Sky Snake Club. Gray squinted and looked. The Sky Snake Club was just a few hundred meters away. The real owner was found. Gray looked coldly at the gangsters who were as honest as mice. Although he knew that they were also involved, he had no time to care about them and had to let them go. Gray's feet loosened, his wings spread, and he stopped Jian. Under the confused gaze of the gangsters, he flew into the sky and flew towards Yejing. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 156. In mid-air, Gray yelled at the ground. Hey! Stop fighting! We've found the rightful owner. The sound echoed from above. Yejing was startled for a moment, then casually chopped down a living corpse and looked up at the sky. Where is it? Gray pointed in a direction and raised his voice a bit. It's a few hundred meters over here. I'll wait there first. You guys come here quickly. After saying that, he carried Jian and flew over there. Yejing and Ai Zayakui, who was not far away, looked at each other and nodded. The two moved closer to each other and changed directions. Ai Zayakui was behind, Yejing was in front, and the knife in his hand was in front, cutting a bloody path. Yejing was far better than Ai Zayakui in opening a road. There was no need to fight too hard. Anyone who stood in my way would die. With one blow, he would chop aside all the living corpses standing in front of him. The road was opened with violence, and the journey was smooth. In just a few minutes, we arrived at the location of the rightful owner. Yejing looked up and saw Gray and the little girl lying on a roof. The two of them jumped up and joined them. After reuniting, Yejing couldn't help but wonder, what's going on? How do you know the rightful owner is here? Gray replied, when I was in the OB above, I caught a few thieves and found out through interrogation that these living corpses and the missing little girls were all done by the real master. After speaking, Gray pointed in the direction of the club, which was still dozens of meters away. Look. It's really here. Yejing looked along his fingers, and his face suddenly tightened and became serious. 50 meters away, there was a 3-story club, and around the club, hundreds of living corpses were densely roaming, surrounding the entire club, seemingly for protection. What should I do? Go straight in? No. Before anyone could answer, Jian spoke first. We don't know the condition of the 5 young girls yet. It would be difficult to handle if we alert the snake. Yejing raised his eyebrows slightly. Are those 5 children still alive? Gray nodded. I heard from those little thieves that the real owner seems to be bleeding from 5 girlfriends. Drink human blood? After Yejing was stunned for a moment, he couldn't help but feel a surge of anger in his heart, and his face gradually became gloomy. Catching 5 children under the age of 10 is already a beast, and they even let them drink their blood. They are really worse than beasts. What can children under the age of 10 understand? They are still the flowers and bones of the country. Why should they be treated like this? This time, how much harm will be done to their physical and mental health? Originally, their mission was to find the criminals and then execute them. But now, the plan cannot keep up with the changes. Since the 5 children are still alive, the top priority must be to ensure the lives of the 5 children. There is no doubt about this. Thinking of this, Ji Mu's brows furrowed even more. Is there any way to avoid alerting the snake? It doesn't seem to be possible. There are living corpses all around, so they must be connected. Once we knock on the door, the real owner inside will definitely sense it. If you get angry, he will be spoiled. Aizayakui and Gray nodded in agreement. Just think about what unscrupulous things this beast would do if it angered the rightful owner. At this time, Yejing suddenly felt someone touching him. He lowered his head and saw that at some point, Ji Qingjian had touched him. Her white and tender hands touched the golden dragon slaying in his hand, with a hint of affection on her cute face. This knife is so sharp. What material is it made of? Can Yejing make one for me too? Yejing's mouth twitched. We can't build it, we can't afford the materials. Ji Qingjian patted her chest and said boldly, I'll do it. Yejing shook his head. You can't afford it? Why can't I afford it? Just tell me how many spirit stones you have. 100 million. Yejing thought about it and revealed a relatively conservative figure. He didn't know the value of Omega Sublight. He thought it was less than 100 million, but it was about the same. Yejing couldn't help but feel his heart ache when he thought of using a weapon worth nearly 100 million, silently thinking that it was just stored in this knife, and it would have to be replaced in the future, and it would have to be replaced in the future. 100 million. 100 million. When this number was exposed, Ji Qingjian was stunned for an instant, staring blankly at the golden dragon slaying in Yejing's hand. Gray was stunned for a moment, then his eyes flashed, as if he remembered something. He stood up suddenly. Pointing at Yejing, he said with a shocked expression, You. Is it that thing? Did you use that thing to make such a crappy thing? Yejing was stunned and smiled awkwardly. I don't understand what you are talking about. He cursed himself in his mind for forgetting that Gray was also present when he stole the Omega Sublight. He was careless. Aizayakoi's face, which had always been calm, also changed drastically. She stared at the local sword in Yejing's hand with a dark and gloomy expression, and her eyes turned into money shapes. After selling this knife, I will be debt-free. But, Ji Qingjian suddenly let out a loud sigh and said slightly angrily, if you don't build it, you won't build it. Who are you fooling? This knife is worth 100 million? Isn't it nonsense? I can't see anything except for the sharp point. What's the use? You can tell it's broken. Yejing thought to himself. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his brain. Sharp. Sharp. Yejing turned his head and looked at the 3-story club, looking thoughtful. What's wrong? Yejing pointed at the clubhouse and asked, do you think my knife can split the wall of this clubhouse? Gray chuckled, nonsense, of course it can. You don't even look at what your knife is made of, but the problem is, how can we get close quietly? Yejing nodded and pointed upwards, you take me over, I'll land from above, break through the roof and rush in, how about that? God's soldiers descended from the sky. Gray's eyes lit up, sure. If we approach quietly from above, we don't have to alarm the zombies. With the material of the Golden Dragon Slayer, we can easily break through the roof and enter. After entering, we can find out the location of the real owner by exploring with inspiration. Good idea. Yejing said again. AI Zyakoi can sneak in directly, and the two of us can just go in from above. AI Zyakoi nodded in agreement. Ji Qingjian pointed at herself expectantly. What about me? What about me? Yejing glanced at the little girl who was only as tall as his chest, then turned to Gray and said, Xiao Wu is also a practitioner, right? Contact him. Gray understood and called Xiao Wu directly. What's wrong, master? Gray said, I'll send you a coordinate, come and pick up the little girl quickly. Ji Qingjian was slightly stunned and furious. I want to go too. Don't worry, it's impossible, it's too dangerous. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 157. A stream of purple light flew from afar. Despite Ji Qingjian's angry struggle, she was still put into the car and watched her go away. Next, it was no small matter. Being able to control the existence of so many living corpses was definitely not a simple thing. They were not sure that they could protect Ji Qingjian, so they might as well send her away like this. After sending Ji Qingjian away, the three of them looked at each other. AI Zyakoi acted first, turning around, and her whole body was covered with dark shadows. Under the flow, the whole person turned into a black shadow, escaped into the ground and moved towards the club. There was a squirming movement behind Gray, and a pair of mutated wings stretched out from his back. After rising slightly, they grabbed Yejing's shoulders. Yejing said, Can I step on your back? Gray, get out. The two of them flew straight into the sky, and at a height of about 100 meters, they moved towards the clubhouse, fearing that their position would be too low and attract the attention of the living corpses below. The distance of 50 meters passed with a flap of wings. The two of them floated directly above the club, and gently and slowly landed to a distance of only 10 meters. Looking at the unknown area below, Gray didn't know what he thought of, and couldn't help but sigh. How do you feel, with you? Have you been doing dangerous things since we met? Yejing had a dark look on his face. Don't blame me for everything, okay? You did it yourself. Gray chuckled and asked, Is this distance okay? Yejing looked down. It was less than 10 meters away and there was no danger. He nodded, Okay, let's airdrop. He held the Golden Dragon Slayer tightly with both hands, held the knife upright in front of his chest, and aimed it at the club below, forming a slashing shape. After hearing what Yejing said, Gray immediately let go of his hands and dropped Yejing into the air. He looked at Yejing, who was falling rapidly, and couldn't help but murmured. This feeling is not bad. The distance of 10 meters passed by in a second, and in the blink of an eye, he was approaching the roof of the building. Yejing's spiritual energy turned around his whole body, and white light covered his whole body. The golden light of the blade flashed, and 3 or 4 meters of sword energy gushed out from the blade. Drink. Smash. Then it was the roof of the building that Yejing's body touched first. It hurts. The knife collided with the roof of the building. At the moment of contact, the roof collapsed suddenly, and Yejing fell from the sky carrying rubble. It hurts. In the luxurious private room, the woman in red was leaning on the leather sofa, with a hint of red flowing into her bright red lips, and a look of satisfaction appeared on her beautiful face. She was surrounded by 5 little girls. 2 threads could be faintly seen above each little girl's head, 1 red thread and 1 white thread. The red thread flowed out of the little girl's body and flowed into the lips of the woman in red. The white silk flows out from the body of the woman in red and flows into the bodies of several little girls. This is the life force of the woman in red. She needs the little girl's first blood to recover from her injuries. The large amount of first blood flowing out means that her vitality is damaged, and the woman in red is using her own vitality to make up for it. Life goes on and on. Just when she was getting stronger from sucking, her face suddenly changed, she raised her head suddenly, looked upward with strange red eyes, and cursed in her heart. She waved her long white arm, and a red curtain appeared out of thin air, wrapping the 5 little girls together. The next second the red screen appears. There were loud noises on the roof and it collapsed. Large pieces of gravel hit the private room, and dirty dust filled the surroundings. The woman in red frowned and couldn't help covering her mouth and nose with her clothes. Damn it! They came so quickly, what kind of trash are those people? After the dust gradually dispersed, Yejing held a golden long knife with a solemn expression and looked around cautiously. Then, he saw the woman in red protecting the 5 little girls, and was stunned. Hiss! What a nice view! This must be the most beautiful woman he has ever seen, with her bright red robe and charming figure, striking Yejing's sight. But what's going on? Where are the enemies? Could it be that she got there first and killed the enemy? Ahem. Yejing coughed twice and asked, "Hello, are you here to take over the mission too?" What responded to him was a red light. The woman in red flicked her fingertips, and a ray of red light suddenly shot out, directly hitting Yejing's eyebrows. Once she took action, it was a fatal blow. Yejing was shocked. He turned to one side and hurriedly dodged. The red light passed through his previous position and shot directly into the wall behind him, penetrating instantly. Wait, Yejing quickly stopped. I'm here to save the little girl, I'm not a bad person. The woman in red sneered, waved her slender and delicate white hand at Yejing, and several bloody long swords condensed out of thin air and shot towards Yejing. At the same time, a cold and chilling voice sounded in the private room. The person you are looking for is me. What? Yejing's thoughts haven't changed yet. A beautiful woman who protects 5 little girls is the kidnapper? What is going on? I'm a little confused. In this situation, he didn't have time to think too much. As soon as he turned his hand, the sword suddenly appeared, golden light and blood collided in the air, the energy blended, and exploded. The huge noise shook the private room violently, and from time to time, gravel fell from above and hit the red curtain protective cover. When the woman in red saw it, she gritted her teeth, pointed her finger at the red curtain, and a large amount of blood and essence burst out from her body. The next second, the red curtain disappeared, and at the same time, the 5 little girls disappeared. She was transferred away. Damn it! The first blood that I had accumulated with great difficulty was consumed by 1/10 in an instant. It was all the fault of the person in front of me. The red-clothed woman flashed with cold light, and a fierce aura surged out of her whole body. Her red hair fluttered, and her enchanting body burst out with a blood color 2 meters high. The murderous aura condensed, and the hostility filled the space. In this way, she seemed like a murderous female devil. Yejing was slightly surprised by the sudden change. No matter when he felt the rich blood color, his face became gloomy. There is no doubt. The person who captured the 5 little girls and turned them into zombies was her. What else can I say? Kill her. Although Yejing's anger gradually subsided when he saw that the 5 little girls were safe and sound, that was not a reason not to fight. Holding the knife in one hand, he turned his waist slightly, and in the flash of lightning, golden light flashed. Draw the knife. The brilliant golden light lit up the entire dim room, and the golden blade slashed horizontally, slashing in front of the red-dressed woman. Damn it! This force is obviously inconsistent with the cultivation level. A trace of anger appeared on the beautiful face of the red-dressed woman. She raised her right hand slightly, revealing 5 dark red nails. A wisp of blood and pure blood rushed out from her soft fingertips. The pure blood faced the mountain-like blade. Boom! Crack! Her nail was broken, a small piece. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bouletin G. Bayet. Chapter 158. What? The woman in red felt the pain from her nails. She looked at her nails in amazement with a pair of charming eyes. Between the smooth nails, a small white mark appeared vaguely. It was very small. But even when I was little, it still cracked. The face of the woman in red sank, and she was extremely shocked. I can't even bear the attack from a human realm. Impossible. Although I was seriously injured, my physical strength was still there. How could I be injured by a knife? A cold light flashed between her bright red eyes, and she suddenly looked at the weapon in Yejing's hand. It was a golden long knife. Golden light particles flowed between the blade and the blade, bit by bit, exuding an amazing light. The smell of fear. There's something wrong with this weapon. Being too old to die is a thief. As a well-informed woman, she could tell at a glance that it was a problem with the weapon. It should be made of a material with strong destructive power and could directly apply the attack to the attacked object. Damn it! It has been dormant for decades. Have times changed now? Why would a random kid show up with such a heroic knife? Yejing didn't know what the woman in red was thinking, otherwise he would definitely laugh out loud. Not that kid is qualified to use the three weapons of Xinyu. Although his attack power is not strong, don't forget that as a longsword fused with Omega Light, it has a very terrifying passive skill. Destruction of ashes, produces serious injury when attacking, reduces the enemy's healing effect by 50%, destroys 1% of the enemy's body, current physical injury level, and burns 1% of the aura in the enemy's body, the current aura. As long as the attack touches the enemy's body, it will immediately destroy 1% of its body, burn the aura, and reduce the healing effect by 50%. It may not be noticeable when dealing with low-level practitioners, but once if the opponent is a strong man, the effect will be very significant. After a hit with the knife, Yejing did not choose to pursue him. Instead, he looked at the woman in red with a solemn expression and a cautious face. He held the long knife tightly in one hand and stood motionless. This person is obviously not on the same level as the enemies we have encountered before. No matter in terms of appearance or momentum, the difference is huge. If he hadn't felt the strength of her aura before taking action, Yejing would have thought that he was facing someone in the Destiny realm or even stronger. But even so, the woman in red was filled with endless blood, and her power made Yejing dare not act rashly. Call. Yejing pursed her dry lips, looked at the bloody woman in red a few meters away, and said tentatively, "Who are you? Why did you kidnap those children? I see that you protected those children before, so it's not a big deal. Bad guy, how about this, just leave the child to us and let the matter be over." As soon as she heard about the children, the woman in red couldn't help but feel the anger in her heart, which went straight to her brain. She consumed a lot of life force to supply those children, just to extract some first blood to treat the injuries. But now, as soon as I started fighting with Yejing, 1/10 of it was gone. Her body ached and her heart was bleeding. Thinking of this, the woman in red glared at Yejing fiercely and gritted her teeth, "I am your aunt." She also had a bad temper. As her exquisite figure turned around, the blood in the sky gradually took shape, and a 10-foot sword stood out of thin air, pointing directly at Yejing. "Kill him to death for my aunt." The woman in red stretched out her two fingers, pointed at the blood sword from a distance, made a swipe in the air, and controlled the blood sword to strike at Yejing. Swordsmanship. Yejing was slightly envious and expressed that he really wanted it, but unfortunately, this kind of thing was not available to him. Pooh. Is now the time to think about this? In an instant, the blood sword stood above Yejing's head, flashed a red light, and struck down deeply. Yejing held the handle of the knife in one hand and the blade in the other, placing it across his head and pushing it up. Boom! The moment he came into contact with the blood sword, Yejing's whole body trembled violently, his legs were slightly bent, and he almost knelt. His feet collapsed suddenly, the ground was shattered, and countless broken marks spread around. There was no intact land within a 3-meter radius. His whole body was hit and sunk several times. The ground couldn't bear this huge force and broke. So heavy. Cold sweat broke out on Yejing's forehead, and his face turned red from suppressing it. He was holding the bloody sword above his head, his arms were shaking, and his legs were shaking, as if a huge mountain was pressing on his head. No. I can't stand it anymore. Yejing suddenly retreated and took a few steps back to avoid the blood sword. The blood sword lost its target and hit the ground directly, creating a huge hole in the ground and falling downstairs. So fierce. Yejing looked at the deep hole in front of him, swallowed his saliva, and his heart was beating fast. This blood sword could probably smash out War of War directly. Tisk. When the blow missed, the woman in red smacked her lips, raised her eyebrows, pointed her fingers from bottom to top, and in the blink of an eye, there was a loud noise, and the blood sword shot out from below and struck Yejing. Still coming. Yejing was shocked. Wouldn't this thing dissipate? He didn't have time to think too much, he was busy fighting against the blood sword. Every impact made his arms numb and painful. What kind of old witch is this? Yejing looked at the peerless beauty of the woman in red and couldn't help but curse inwardly. He didn't believe that the woman in front of him was only in her 20s. It must have been an old witch. He really guessed right. This is a woman in menopause. Menopausal women are not easy to mess with. Yejing thought he was already very powerful, but the reality was cruel. He was now forced to retreat again and again by a blood sword made by someone else, and he was about to have no way to retreat. Just when Yejing was thinking about how to break the situation, his help arrived. On the roof of the broken building, a flash of light appeared, and more than a dozen light feathers fell, and the light feathers turned into arrows and shot directly at the woman in red. There are helpers. The woman in red was slightly startled, and then she waved her sleeves, and a faint red curtain appeared above. The light feathers hit the red curtain, causing a few ripples, and then dissipated. Just when the woman in red was about to sneer, her pretty face suddenly changed, and a strong sense of crisis came from the back of her back. Her strong reaction ability and rich combat experience allowed her to predict it one step ahead. Before her nerves reacted, her body had already moved. Her body suddenly tilted to the right, and then the next moment, a black shadow passed through her from behind, leaving a blood mark on her snow-white shoulder. The smell of blood filled the air, with a hint of fragrance. It's useless to come with a few people. The woman in red sneered, and her exquisite jade hand rolled with blood light, and she slapped the back of the black shadow without hesitation. However, it missed. The black shadow seemed to have been prepared for a long time. After missing the attack, it directly fled into the ground and stayed away from the woman in red. Thank you for the 2,000 coins reward from Fukanban's he. I haven't received any rewards for a long time. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Buletin G. Bayet. Chapter 159. Are you okay? Gray floated down from above and looked at Yejing, who was blushing and holding a bloody sword, and couldn't help but ask. Yejing's arms flew away, and he suddenly flicked the blood sword away, but the next second, the blood sword hit him again. Damn it! Yejing cursed secretly and roared, that spellcaster! Interrupt her from controlling the blood sword. Good. Gray took a deep breath, tensed his expression, turned his head and was about to attack, when he saw the beauty of the woman in red. Then he hid his face and turned around and left. I'm sorry brother, I can't attack a beautiful woman. Goodbye. What a damn beauty. Have you ever seen that beauty in her 20s so fierce? She is just an old witch, she is probably older than your grandma, Yejing said angrily. In this world, Spiritual energy abilities are ever-changing, and there are many people who have rejuvenated themselves and even had plastic surgery. He couldn't believe that the woman in front of him was only in her 20s. Old witch? Before Gray could react, the woman in red who was controlling the blood sword a few meters away heard it. After being stunned for a moment, a surge of anger surged in her heart without any warning. The rage was so intense that it burned her mind. He, I can't pretend I didn't hear this. The woman in red grinned and let out a terrifying laugh. Anyone with a discerning eye would know how angry she was. Don't mention a woman's age in front of her, it's a taboo. As soon as Yejing finished speaking, he saw that the aura of the woman in red rose sharply. The blood flowing around her body exploded. A huge column of blood enveloped her and spread to the surroundings at a very fast speed. Before Yejing and the others could make any move, they were enveloped by this blood energy, which penetrated their whole bodies. Blood successor barrier. Something like a barrier surrounded the entire area. Within the barrier, there was endless blood and a terrifying aura. Damn it! My first blood! The woman in red was panting slightly and felt extremely heartbroken. The blood succession barrier can isolate a small space. In the space, her strength will be slightly enhanced, while other people in the blood succession barrier will be affected by the blood energy and their bodies will be sluggish. Reduced blood flow rate, decreased reaction, and other effects. The price for using the blood succession barrier is first blood, a batch of first blood that can only be extracted by girls under the age of 10, a batch of first blood that she cannot produce a drop of every day. With her original strength, the blood succession barrier could cover 100 meters in radius, but now, the situation was so bad that it could not expand until it covered a radius of more than 10 meters. A woman's dignity needs to be protected with her life. When the blood successor barrier unfolded, Ai Zayakui, who had escaped to the ground and turned into a shadow, was also cleared out and flew several meters away. What is this? Yejing looked at the faint blood filling the air with vigilance. He was about to swing his knife to kill, but stopped for a moment. My speed? Slow. It's not the kind of unnoticeable slowdown. It seems to have dropped by about 20%. Is this the influence of blood energy? There is even a halo skill that can reduce the enemy's attributes in a large area. Yejing expressed his envy. But no matter how much I envy it, it doesn't belong to him. Go to hell. The woman in red had cold eyes, with an angry look in her cold eyes. With a wave of her hand, the blood in the sky turned into a rain of arrows, shooting at Yejing and the others. Careful! Yejing said in shock. There were attacks from all directions and 360 degrees, and the weapons could not block them at all. He quickly circulated his spiritual energy, and a faint white light appeared around his body, wrapping him up. Has even the speed of spiritual energy slowed down? What a powerful range skill! Could this be said to be a small field? Not only did Yejing have no means of defense, but neither did Ai Zayakui. She could only turn into a black shadow and lay paralyzed on the ground. The bloody arrows hit the black shadow and made ripples, making Yejing very worried. Gray was the one with the simplest defense among the three. He directly stretched out his wings and wrapped himself in. The wings were always injured. There are actually birdmen? But is this useful? The woman in red sneered, and looked at the three people with her charming red eyes. A red light shot out from her eyes. The shadow of the red light, like an illusory one, split into three and hit the three people's brains directly. Moment. When the red light hit the black shadow on the ground, a muffled cough sounded, and Ai Zayakui appeared directly from the black shadow. Her face was pale, her mouth was bleeding, and she collapsed on the ground. The red light passed directly through the white feathers, like a laser, and shot directly into Gray's brain. Mental skills. Gray was frightened. He was about to say something, but he felt as if his brain had been hit by a heavy hammer. He felt dizzy and in pain. He suddenly lost consciousness and fell to the ground. What's wrong? Yejing didn't understand what happened, but in the blink of an eye, both Gray and Ai Zayakui fell to the ground. Just as he was about to take action, a red light flashed before his eyes, and then the red light shot into his brain. Damn it! What kind of attack is this? It actually passed directly through the body. Yejing was shocked and panicked, not knowing what to do. However, subject to mental attacks, trigger mental immunity, advanced, immune to all mental attacks, lasting 15 seconds, 15 minutes cooldown. Psychic attack. It turned out to be a spiritual attack. Yejing was stunned. This was the first time he encountered a spiritual attack that directly hit his soul. While he was surprised, he also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had spirit immunity. Otherwise, he would have fallen to the ground like Gray and Ai Zayakui. In that case, the whole army would be wiped out. He couldn't say that Gray and Ai Zayakui were useless when they encountered a spiritual attack. There was no way. The human realm cultivates the body and spiritual energy, while the underground palace realm cultivates the spirit and soul. They are only in the human realm. Their souls are as fragile as newborn babies. They have no strength at all. Once they encounter a spiritual attack, they have no means. And only when they are in the underground palace realm can they have the ability to practice spiritual exercises and strengthen the soul. However, Yejing glanced at his passive skill status bar. God of War combo * 15 layers. Spirit immunity is continuing, countdown 13 seconds, 12 seconds. There is still time. He must reverse the situation within these 10 seconds. Otherwise, he will have no means to face a spiritual attack. He can't be attacked by her remotely anymore, otherwise he can't even touch her body. A fierce light flashed in Yejing's eyes. Close combat was what he was good at? Ha! Yejing's whole body of spiritual energy suddenly burst out, the golden dragon slaying sword in his hand flashed with golden light, and his legs exerted force. A figure flashed and rushed straight to the woman in red. The distance between the two of them was less than 10 meters, and they arrived in the blink of an eye. How are you okay? The woman in red was slightly stunned when she saw that Yejing was hit by her soul head-on but was not hurt at all. And this daze gave Yejing the opportunity to get close. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 160. For cultivators above the underground palace realm, the simplest way to deal with people in the human realm is to give him a mental shock, which will go straight to the depths of the soul. The fragile and defenseless soul will be instantly defeated and lose consciousness. In severe cases, the soul will be damaged. The red-clothed woman knew that Yejing and the other two were all in the human realm, so in the stalemate, a red light flashed and a mental shock was given, which was very effective. Ai Zayakui and Gray were knocked down before they did anything. If Yejing did not have a passive skill of mental immunity, he would probably be lying on the ground now. Unfortunately, he has it. Damn it! Could it be that he has a prop to defend against mental attacks? The red-clothed woman looked at Yejing, who was close at hand, and countless thoughts flashed through her mind. If one time was not enough, then the second time. Gritting her teeth, her red eyes lit up, and a dazzling illusory red light flashed out, hitting Yejing's brain. It was useless. Yejing's body did not even pause for a moment, and it was useless at all. Something happened. Yejing was less than 1 meter away from the woman in red. She was about to wave her hand to create a red curtain, but it was too late. Kill. A trace of cruelty flashed in Yejing's eyes. He showed no mercy to his enemies. He aimed the knife in his hand at the woman's abdomen. A golden light flashed, and then blood splashed. The clothes were torn and the cloth flew across, revealing the woman's snow-white belly. On her belly, there was a bloody knife mark. Get out. The woman in red looked painful, and a trace of cold sweat appeared on her forehead. She roared, covered her bleeding abdomen with one hand, and with the other hand wrapped in blood, she rubbed out a spiral ball and bombarded Yejing's stomach, directly knocking him several meters away. At the same time, the same two words appeared in the minds of both of them. It hurts. Ahem. Yejing fell to the ground and coughed twice. A mouthful of blood came out of his mouth. He felt a sharp pain in his stomach, as if he was pierced. He felt that this blow almost knocked out the recovery effect of his super physique. Yejing endured the pain and staggered to get up from the ground. He cursed in his heart that he had miscalculated. He didn't expect her physical strength to be so high. He thought that this knife would at least make her lose her fighting ability, if not kill her. Who knew that this person's physical strength had reached a very terrifying level? Yejing's knife, which was close to full force, hit her directly, but it only injured her abdomen and did not make her lose her fighting ability. Not only that, in just a short moment, she even counterattacked and almost broke his internal organs. What kind of old monster is this? Yejing couldn't help cursing in his heart. How could there be such a strong young man in this era? Although Yejing was seriously injured, the woman in red was not much better. She was already seriously injured and her strength was not as good as before. She did not expect to fall here. The woman in red looked at the blood dripping from her abdomen, feeling as if a loved one had died. These were her most precious energy and most precious things. Damn it! Treatment. The woman in red endured the heartache and took out a trace of virgin blood from an unspeakable part of her body, turning it into extremely pure blood and chi, which slowly flowed into the wound on her abdomen. Then, what's so slow? She looked at the wound that was healing slowly and was shocked. The same energy had doubled its recovery speed. That meant consuming twice as much virgin blood. Heartache. She wanted to heal her wounds in peace, but would Yejing give her a chance? Of course not. It's come to this point, who the hell would wait for you to heal before continuing? Yejing ignored the severe pain in his body, holding the long sword flashing with golden light, and rushed forward again. Anyway, he had the passive of super constitution on his body, which had not been triggered yet, and the cool-down time of War of Sorrow had been over long ago. What was he afraid of? Nothing. You'd better lie down honestly. Yejing suddenly rushed out, bent down, changed from one hand to two hands, and stood the long sword on the right side of his body, facing the red-clothed woman's lower abdomen 3 inches. Stabbed it? What a despicable place. If this hits, the Zigong can be stabbed to pieces. Bitch. The red-clothed woman bit her silver teeth, and her eyebrows were raised in anger. Obviously, she didn't care about the injury. At this time, she had already noticed that Yejing's weapon was strange. It was not only sharp, but also could prevent treatment. If it was directly cut, it would be really cold. No. The red-clothed woman showed a trace of struggle on her delicate face. Should she still use it? I can't care so much. Saving my life is important. Just when Yejing's sword was about to stab the red-dressed woman's lower abdomen, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking his sight. The next second, before he could see what it was, he seemed to be hit by a huge energy shock, and flew backwards and fell heavily to the ground. This time, it was really bad. When vitality drops below 20%, the extraordinary physique is automatically triggered, and enters the extraordinary recovery state, recovering 50% of vitality within 10 seconds, and cooling for 1 day. Damn. Why are her moves endless? Yejing's back hit the wall, and the powerful recoil force directly embedded his entire body in the wall, unable to be buckled down. WQNM. How miserable. Yejing moved his body and got himself out of the wall. Now he was in an extraordinary recovery state, and his vitality and injuries began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, only his physical injuries were recovered, and his spiritual energy and exhausted spirit were still there. What is that? Yejing took a breath, raised his head, and looked at the hand of the woman in red, and what she was holding in her hand. I saw that the woman in red had one hand attached to her abdomen, treating her injuries, and the other hand was holding a 3 or 4 meter tall cross. Cross. It was a huge cross, more than 3 meters high, extremely wide, and all black. There was also a pale white skull engraved in the center area. And around the cross, there was a gray airflow flowing, filling this dilapidated private room. That is the breath of death. This is an ominous thing. It's over. It's all over. The woman in red muttered to herself while healing her injuries. When she took out the cross, her red eyes, which were originally full of anger and spirituality, dimmed, as if she had lost hope. The secret realm of the dead will be opened in the city. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bouletin G. Bayet. Chapter 161. The Secret Realm of the Dead? What is that? Yejing was about to step forward to stop Hongyi, let's call it that for now, from recovering from her injuries, but he stopped when he heard her look. A bad premonition surged in his heart. His face showed a solemn expression, and he looked at the skull cross in her hand with vigilance. Hongyi couldn't care about Yejing at this time. While recovering from her injuries, she controlled the blood and energy surging in the blood barrier, wrapped the skull cross, and covered it on the constantly emerging breath of death. Damn it! I was impulsive. Hongyi bit her red lips and felt regretful. The moment she took out the skull cross, she regretted it. This kind of thing should not appear in the city. Can it be taken back? Her blood and the breath of death emitted by the skull cross intertwined together. After just a few seconds, the blood was devoured, and the breath of death was still surging. I can't stop. Hongyi showed regret on her face. She shouldn't have been so impulsive. Even if she was seriously injured, she shouldn't have taken it out. This skull cross is the key to the secret realm of the dead. It usually looks like a palm-sized cross, but once it is used, it will officially open its function and open the secret realm of the dead. 100 years ago, the Omega beam dominated the solar system and pierced the blue planet with unstoppable power. Humans suffered heavy casualties, and some cities were even left with no traces of life and ruins. And this secret realm of the dead was formed by that city. For some reason, the completely destroyed city flowed into an unknown space and continued to exist in another form. That is the dead. And Hongyi is the only survivor of the millions of humans in that city. No, this statement is not right. She is not a human, but a vampire that has been passed down for a long time in ancient times. After the catastrophe, the aura revived, the cosmic energy invaded, and she awakened the vampire genes hidden deep in her blood. Relying on the extremely strong vitality of the blood race, she was in a coma for nearly 100 years, and then woke up 3 years ago. After waking up, she held a skull cross in her hand. At that time, her city had been transformed into a city of the dead, with corpses everywhere. After escaping from the secret realm of the dead, she went from being confused at the beginning to living seriously, and in 3 years, she entered the realm of destiny. And it was at this time that she was recognized by a group of old immortals by comparing her photos from 100 years ago. 100 years ago, her name was Siu, a big star on Blue Star. Now she is Siu, a blood race member of Blue Star. The sudden appearance of a person who had died 100 years ago made a group of old immortals very excited. They thought they had found the secret of resurrection, so they asked Siu to tell them the secret of resurrection. Siu didn't understand, so they started fighting. The great price she paid was that she was seriously injured and dying, and she barely survived by relying on the powerful recovery and vitality of the blood clan, but the primordial blood in her body had been consumed, and her realm had fallen to the third level of the underground palace realm. 3 years of hard work were destroyed in one day. Just for the secret of resurrection that could not exist. She held the key to the secret realm of the dead and came to Jiaolong Street in the 23rd district. When she realized that the street was full of gangsters, she took control of it without hesitation and used it as a base for her to recover from her injuries. Siu also vaguely guessed something in her heart. The secret of her resurrection was in the secret realm of the dead. Originally, she wanted to wait until her body was almost recovered, and then find a deserted place to open the secret realm of the dead to check it out. Who knew that Yejing and others suddenly broke in, and after another fight, they forced out the skull cross. That was the key to the secret realm of the dead. The grey gas filled with the breath of death instantly covered the area, completely crushing Siu's blood barrier and making it disappear. What's going on? Yejing looked at the endless breath of death that suddenly surged out, and couldn't help but be shocked. The ominous premonition became more serious. Instant. The black light on the skull cross in Siu's hand was as bright as obsidian, illuminating the surrounding area. The dim light seemed very dazzling for some reason, making Yejing close his eyes. Around him, he could feel the breath of death flowing like a small river, slowly flowing from his side. When he opened his eyes again, he was stunned, standing there, dumbfounded, and even didn't know that the golden dragon-slaying sword that he had been holding fell to the ground. My goodness! What a hell of a place! Before closing his eyes, he was in a private room. After closing his eyes, the whole world changed. When he opened his eyes again, Yejing thought he had traveled through time. All around him, there was a desolate and lifeless scene, with ruins everywhere, collapsed houses, pale bones, withered grass, and grey air currents floating in the air. This is a grey world. Whether it is the ruins, the sky, the white clouds, or the land, wherever you look, there is only black and white. The whole scene is like an unpainted painting, with only 2 tones of black and white. Yejing's eyes widened, staring at the woman in red not far away. What is this place? Where did you take me? This is another space, inside the secret realm of the dead. If you hadn't pushed me too hard, I wouldn't want to open it. Siu looked at Yejing angrily and moved her hand away from her abdomen. Her abdomen was no longer bleeding. The hideous knife marks left by Yejing's previous cut also disappeared without a trace, returning to its original white and tender appearance. Yejing was completely stunned, his face full of disbelief. Just because I cut you once, you want to pull me to another space. The 2 people who had been fighting to the death before stopped their attacks at the same time and quieted down. Yejing didn't know where this place was, so he was very careful and didn't dare to act rashly. And Siu was not much better. When she woke up 3 years ago, she left the secret realm of the dead in a panic and never went back again. She didn't know what existed in this secret realm. Cease the war first. Yejing picked up the golden dragon-slaying sword from the ground, stroked it gently, and said inconspicuously. He had been in a state of fighting. If Siu said a word of no, he would rush forward directly. Siu nodded. Although she agreed to a ceasefire, she did not explain the secret realm of the dead to Yejing. The 2 were enemies, not friends. Moreover, she had her own things to do. 3 years ago, when she escaped from the secret realm of the dead, she was still an ordinary person. And now, even if her realm has dropped to the underground palace realm, she is no longer the powerless person she was back then. Siu dragged her red dress, tapped her toes lightly, and ignored Yejing at all. As her figure turned, she flew directly into the distance. She wanted to go back to the place where she woke up to see if there was a secret of resurrection. Why are all of them passive skills? Author, Bulletin G. Bayet. Chapter 162. Outside the secret realm of the dead, the gray space like a barrier is constantly expanding. In just 1 minute, it has expanded from a few meters square at the beginning to dozens of square meters, and it is still expanding. At this speed, it will not be long before it touches the boundary of the 22nd district. The sudden appearance of the gray barrier made the refugee practitioners in the 23rd district a little panicked. They didn't understand what it was. As the secret realm of the dead expanded, others retreated one after another, fearing that they would be involved. And some practitioners were brave, or they had confidence in themselves. They walked up in 3 or 2 steps, made up their minds, and reached out to touch the gray barrier. Then, he disappeared from the spot and was swallowed up by the secret realm of the dead. Hey, 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 what is this thing? If it continues like this, it will reach my house. Don't even mention your house. It's almost expanded to District 22. Contact the Federation quickly. Ask them to send someone to deal with it. Are you an idiot? The Federation doesn't care about the life and death of District 23. If the Federation sends someone to investigate, it will take at least dozens of minutes, and these few minutes are enough for the secret realm of the dead to expand across regions. Compared with ordinary citizens, practitioners don't care so much. Anyone with a little vision can see that this is a space secret realm. After entering, what awaits them may be danger, but it may also be a sudden wealth. After the initial panic, the practitioners began to gather. For them, other planetary fragments have landed, not to mention a small secret realm. Among these people, a young man with a pointed face and narrow eyes touched the gray barrier first and disappeared in front of everyone. In the hand of this young man, there is a golden shovel that can cut space. Inside the secret realm of the dead, Yejing looked at the woman in red going away, and wanted to ask something, but he had no chance, and he was not sure what the other party could tell him. Retracting his sight, Yejing turned his head to look at Gray and Ai Zayakui who were lying on the ground, walked over, and slapped them awake. What's going on? Why did I faint? Gray was hit hard on the face, slowly opened his eyes, and looked at Yejing in front of him with a blank face. His memory was still stuck in the past. After the red light of the woman in red hit his brain, he lost consciousness. Red light. Lost consciousness. Gray suddenly remembered something, jumped up directly, and shouted, "Be careful. That's a mental attack. What the hell is this place?" Before Gray finished speaking, he found that he was no longer in the same place, but in a wasteland without any modern sense. Traveled through. Yejing was speechless. Do you still know the word travel through? Seeing Gray jumping around, Yejing didn't care about him much, but turned around to wake up Ai Zayakui. Ai Zayakui was different from Gray. After she opened her eyes, she was stunned for only half a second, then her whole body tensed up, and weapons appeared in both hands in the blink of an eye. When she saw Yejing in front of her, she breathed a sigh of relief and looked around. What is this place? Yejing said that he didn't know either. He was pulled in inexplicably. He knew nothing except that this place was called the secret realm of the dead. Secret realm. Gray was slightly stunned. If it is a secret realm, I know a little. Secret realm means that due to unknown reasons, a small area or region is involved in the crack of time and space. It takes a specific medium to open this space crack and enter it. Medium. If it is a medium, it should be the skull cross in the hand of the woman in red, but what is the use of the secret realm? Yejing asked in confusion. He looked around and saw nothing but desolation and wasteland. The spiritual energy in the air is not pure, mixed with many impurities, and there is a faint deathly aura floating in the gray sky, which makes people feel fearful. Gray shook his head. I don't know either, but I heard from the internet that dragging a region into the crack of time and space requires huge energy support, and this energy may still exist. What kind of energy can drag a region into the crack of time and space? Yejing's first thought was Omega sublight. In his impression, only Omega sublight has such shocking energy. No way. Thinking of this, Yejing was slightly shocked. Could it be that Omega sublight exists in this secret realm? Luck can't be so good. In Yejing's consciousness, the furnace seemed to have heard Yejing's voice, and it shook violently and trembled in the consciousness space. What's going on? This change made Yejing's heart tremble subconsciously. He seemed to be able to feel the urgency and joy emanating from the furnace. Could it be that there is really energy in this secret realm that can urgently meet the needs of the furnace? Thinking of this, Yejing couldn't help but laugh. Just going out to do a random task, he could encounter such a good thing? Yejing's silly laughter without any warning made Gray's heart tremble. What's wrong with you? Did you hit your head? Bah! You hit your head. Yejing rolled his eyes and said unhappily. In a blink of an eye, he pointed to the direction where the woman in red was going away and said, I saw that woman walking this way before. Let's follow her. Maybe there will be unexpected gains. They knew too little about the secret realm of the dead, so they might as well follow the woman in red. Even if they fought, they were not afraid. The three of them were about to walk away, but suddenly, a horrifying scene happened. In the direction where the woman in red had gone before, a huge gray gas column suddenly surged. It was a gas column completely condensed by the breath of death, wider and thicker than a chimney, and the gas column went straight into the sky. Instant. Gray rain fell from the gray sky, and the gray rain poured down all over the sky. The raindrops fell on Yejing and others, and dissipated in the blink of an eye. But when they fell on the ground, a small amount of black gas condensed. However, a terrifying scene happened. In front of them, from under the wasteland, a hand suddenly stretched out, a pale skeleton hand without flesh and blood. 1, 10, 100, 1,000 skeleton hands emerged from the ground, shocking the three people back to back. Oh my God! What is this thing? A few seconds later, the ground was covered with terrifying skeleton hands, and the human skeletons crawled out from the ground one by one as if they had awakened. The sound of bones colliding kept making crackling sounds, and the red eyes flashing all looked at Yejing and the other two, surrounding them. So scary.